So I want to give you a quick introduction to Splunk, and then I also have a little surprise for you. I've done a little bit extra addition to this presentation, specifically for professors, and we'll get to that. So let me get started with the intro. Somebody asked me yesterday, in one sentence, describe Splunk. And actually, the answer is we do data collection and analytics. So that's a pretty short sentence. So what kind of data do we collect? Well, we collect corporate data. We let our customers collect their own data, right? We have customers that, well, we have 91% of the top 100 corporate, I think it's NASDAQ, I guess. Top 91% of the 100 corporate customers that have used Splunk to manage collecting the data and then analyzing it, right? It's their data. So we have customers that have thousands of servers, thousands of machines, devices, all kinds of things like that that are on their network, and we make it easy for them to collect that data and then analyze it, right? So there's a few phases here of the Splunk framework. The first phase is the input phase, right? This is the part where administrators configure their systems to create log files, right? When an application is running, you can oftentimes configure it to be very verbose and log a lot of the data of what's happening to that application underneath it, right? Now, how many of you here have ever looked at a log file before? Okay, that's a lot. Was it fun? Did you spend a lot of time looking through it and trying to, scratch your head and figure out what's going on in here and where is the problem happening, that kind of thing, right? So we capture all of that data and we parse it. In other words, when you look at a log file, usually there's events in there, right? A log file might be a megabyte large or even larger. And there's little events in there, right, that indicate typically a timestamp of when something happened and what happened. What user did it, or what application did it, what the user did, or what the application did, right? So all of that is in the log file. We capture that. We have you can call it an agent or a service or a process that is installed on each of the machines where we capture the data from. That's usually the best way that we capture that data, is through this universal forwarder agent. And then we send it to the indexers, and we parse that, breaking up the log file into small events with the timestamp, date and timestamp. And then we index that. And then that's searchable, so then you can search that. Now, our customers typically capture billions or even trillions of events per day, right? We have, well, how many employees does College have? I don't know, but it's probably several hundred, if not even higher, right? What about students? Thousands, right? Everybody's doing things on computers, and we can capture that, right? So it's, the system scales to potentially use hundreds of servers to manage the data coming in and indexing. But you can also just run it on one laptop, the whole product. So it's quite scalable. So there's different kinds of inputs. Typically, we started off years ago, now Splunk is I think about 16 years old for the company. I started back in 2016. And when we first started, all we were doing is monitoring log files. And then everybody in all the corporate IT groups around the world loved Splunk because it makes it really easy to capture that data and then analyze it, right? So log files was our bread and butter, and it still is today. However, we also capture network traffic. So anything that's going over the corporate network can be captured and then indexed and then searchable. We capture script output, Linux and Windows logs, all kinds of stuff. Pretty much anything that's that's happening on computers, we can collect it, send it to the indexers, index it, and get it searchable. Of course, there's security involved and all of that. Not everybody can see everything that's being indexed. You have different roles of users and organization and all of that, right? All right, so let me ask you, how much time, I know, that's my second question. My first question is, when you assign homework to your students, what's one of the first questions that they will probably ask you? Elizabeth.
What do I have to turn in?
What do I have to turn in? How do I turn it in? Right? Great question. You know what my answer is when I have students in my class? I have this cool tool called Splunk. It lets me look at everything that the students are doing in our labs. And we built dashboards, so of course Splunk lets you search all this data, generate dashboards, and display that. Right? So my second question, which is kind of reading out, how much time do you spend grading? Is it a lot? Anybody just spend like 5-10 minutes for a whole class on grading some project? Sarcastic laughter, of course. All right, good. So let me give you a short demo. Oh, by the way, there's my name, my email if you want to get a hold of me. Let me show you. So this week, I am teaching Splunk Enterprise Security Essentials. So our product lends itself quite naturally to do security monitoring, right? Is there a breach? Is there indicators of compromise? Are people doing malicious activities, or whether it's on purpose or accidentally, all that kind of stuff, right? So we have a product called Splunk Enterprise Security that runs on top of Splunk, right? Using all of the things that I just described. So this week I'm teaching that topic to a few students, and as they're doing their work, here's my little grader dashboard that I'm going to show you. I've anonymized, I had a pointer here, but you can see the student names. I've anonymized those so that you don't know which my students are lacking in doing their labs this week. But this is basically one of the dashboards for this class. So we create dashboards for other classes as well. There's other topics that we teach. I do have yet another one to show you as well, so if I have time, I'll do that. All right, so can we all see that dashboard? You can, right? I've got 4 students now, and here we can see what machine they're running on, and then basically a very brief summary of how they're doing in the labs. Do you see the red? That actually should be in green. And I can fix that with the dashboard. Green, 100% lab completion. It's showing in red. You can see here, this student, student 5, only did 71% of lab 2. Right? You can see the lab numbers here. 25% of lab 3. And then there was no lab 4, so that's missing. Then lab 5, I think everybody, oh no, wait, student 1. Mm-hmm. All right, student 1 didn't do lab 5 yet. And then we've gotten up to about lab 6, as you can tell. Student 100, that's me. Of course, I've done all of my prep work ahead of time, so it's recorded back. Well, almost all that prep work. There's a little bit I didn't do there in one lab, and so this loads right away. What it's doing is it's searching all the log files of the student machines, and what we're doing is we're searching for specific indicators of something that we want the students to do, right? We want them to go to a specific navigation of, to navigate to a certain dashboard or to go and do some certain exercise, right? To go and create an investigation, or go and create notable events, or change the status from open to, in progress or closed, things like that, right? I know you don't know the product, but we have students going into it and doing all these things during lab time. And that's exactly what each of these searches is doing, is searching for specific indicators or signatures in the log data to tell me that yes, the students did that part. So really, I don't usually monitor my students during the class. I could, some instructors do, they run this dashboard right off the bat, and then they tell the students, and I've done it before where especially on a longer class, a 5-day class or something like that, our classes typically run 9 to 1:30, 4 hours, that kind of thing, sometimes 9 to 5. And so sometimes on a Thursday, I'll go and load this up, and then I'll ping the students that are, hey, you're a little bit behind here. If you want your certificate of completion, you better get on the labs, right? So this lets me monitor them throughout the whole process if I want to. Usually I just do it right at the end of the class, and it takes me 5 minutes to make sure that the students have all done it. If there's students that I'm about to fail, I will print this out, digitally, just to a PDF, and have it as a record. That way, I had that students challenge me before, saying, oh yeah, how come I didn't get my certificate of completion? I did the labs. I'm like, oh yeah, you did, eh? Okay. I'm actually a little bit Canadian, that's why I said the A part, but I have proof that you didn't, and I can show them, right? Oh look, you didn't do those labs. So, let me just show you one more thing here. So for example, this is a summary page, right? But if a student, maybe they're not challenging me, but maybe they're asking, well, what did I miss, right? What part of the project did I miss? Okay, let me show you. Let's see here. So lab 3, you can see here, student 1 only did 25%, right? And student 5 only did 25%. So what I can do is I can click on that. That's just one of the designs of our dashboard, and let us drill down into the details. And then basically what we're looking for lab 3 is, the lab 3 is a topic on risk scores. So part of our product, our security product, keeps track of the risk score for assets and identities of the corporation, right? Do you have servers or machines that are involved in risky behavior, or do you have users that are involved in risky behavior, that kind of thing? And so we have a way to do automation of that. And in Lab 3, the students practice, checking risk scores and things like that. And one of the features of the product is to allow an analyst, a security operations analyst, to adjust manually the risk score. So it's an ad hoc adjustment. Well, one of the lab steps or tasks tells the student, go do this, right? And we give them steps to do it. Did they all do it? Well, no. Look, there you can see student 1 didn't do the ad hoc adjustment. Student 5 didn't, and student 1, that's me. I thought I did it, but I guess I didn't. And then there's other tasks, right? So there's a risk analysis dashboard. Did they navigate to it? Did they use it? Did they go look at the details? And did they look at other things called risk notables? Right? So I can tell right here which parts they did and didn't do. Right? So I can do that for each of the labs. And we've got 10 labs. We're going to finish probably today or tomorrow, and by then all of these will show up as hopefully. And now I want to just talk a little bit about some of the challenges. Because for you to do this, you need to learn Splunk, right? Now, Splunk's not that difficult to learn. I've been with Splunk for many years. I still don't know everything about it. So it is quite a lot to learn if you needed to know everything about it. But one of the things with Splunk is that we allow you to just learn what you need to learn, basically, right? The parts that you want to use. So the challenges that you might face, if you want to do this, if you want to save yourself some time for manually grading, in fact, you might still have to manually grade this. Actually, we do have one class. I don't know how many classes we have in total. There are different topics. I would probably estimate about 20 plus different topics of classes that we have. Only one of them we have to do manual grading. It's an architecting class. It's where students draw the architecture, right, of the product as they're going to architect it out in their corporation. So they draw it out, and they have to email us the architecture picture. I call them. They can just take a picture with their phone and email it to me, and then I do the grading. And that takes me an hour for each student. And I don't like teaching that class because of that reason, right? I love teaching it because it's an architecture class, but I just don't like grading it actually. So, what are your challenges going to be? Well, learning Splunk, first of all, and it's not too terribly difficult, but you also need to get that data, right? What are your students using that you want to grade and automate grading? Well, hopefully it's software, right? Because that's the stuff that you can log easily. If they're doing, written assignments, maybe in a few years you can scan it with AI and then run. We do have AI on our product as well. Maybe in a few years that might work for you. I don't know. Let's see. But if they're doing things in software, any software, you can log it, right? There's log files underneath. You just need to get access to those log files, right, and then send them in the Splunk. So that might be a challenge because you might have to work with IT or other groups, right? Then you need to configure monitoring that, whether it's file monitors, network monitors, etc. Right? You might need to configure the application to log more verbose information than it normally does. A lot of times applications by default will only log warnings and error messages. So you might need to configure the logging level. Right? Some of you have heard of Log4j perhaps. It was a big fiasco with fast security-wise a couple of years ago now. Log4j is a common logging tool that developers use to make it easy for their applications to do logging. So Log4j makes it easy to configure the level of logging verbose to the most, for the highest level of logging. So you might have to do that. Now, the last bullet here might seem to be one of the most difficult ones. Like I mentioned earlier, you've looked at some of you looked at log files. It's no fun, right? It's not sentences in English usually, right? It's just data spewed out onto a log file. And what you need to do is interpret that data, right? And, Microsoft has its way of logging data. Oracle has its way of logging data. Other software has their ways of logging data. So you need to interpret that. Well, we have an app store, if I can call it that, called Splunk Base. And that app store, you can actually navigate to it without being a customer. Yeah, you can. And you can see that there's over 2,000 applications there of different types for different products. So whatever software your students are using, it might be there in Splunk Base. And so you just download the app, install it in Splunk, and then it'll help you interpret that data. So you don't have to worry about it. If you do have some weird software that we don't know about, you can also configure Splunk to interpret that data for you to make it easier. So once you've got the data in, you just need to create what we call SPL reports. Who here has learned SQL before? SQL, right? It's a way to do searching in a database, typically, right? Well, we have something very similar called SPL. And in my opinion, it's way more intuitive than SQL. And it's even more error-less. You're less likely to have, your Splunk is less likely to complain about syntax errors with SQL. For example, when you're listing which fields you want from the log, you just type them in with spaces in between. You don't even need a column. things like that, with syntax.